In this 1990 photograph, Darcy Wetenhall and his son Guy stand proud, pillars of success at the helm of one of Australia's most celebrated stud farms. Their lives seemed enviable, their legacy untouchable. Yet, just 2 years later, their story took a chilling turn. 7 gunshots shattered their world, leaving a family torn apart and a nation stunned. The Wetenhall massacre wasn't just a crime. It was a tragedy steeped in hidden lives, shattered trust, and choices that led to devastating consequences. If untold crime stories captivate you, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's bring more of these cases to light. Welcome to Crime Catalog. Darcy Wetenhall was a name that carried weight in Australian sheep farming. His family's stud farm, Stanbury, was more than just a business. It was a symbol of excellence, producing award-winning Corriedale sheep recognized across the country and even internationally. The farm stood as a beacon of pride in Victoria, representing decades of hard work and dedication. For outsiders, it seemed idyllic, a thriving enterprise, a respected family, and a legacy that stretched back generations. But while the world saw success and admiration, the Wetenhall family lived in a reality far removed from the surface charm. Darcy himself was at the center of it all. Known for his expertise and ambition, he built on the foundation laid by his relatives, especially his cousin Rupert, who first established Stanbury's reputation. After Rupert's untimely death in 1962 during a business trip to Argentina, Darcy stepped into a role that would define his life. With Rupert's widow Janet remaining on the farm, Darcy took the reins and drove the operation to new heights. Yet, even as the farm flourished, whispers of Darcy's personality began to emerge. He was a man of contrasts, generous to some, yet intimidating and short-tempered to others. Those who worked closely with him often described him as volatile, with moods that could shift without warning. These traits painted a picture of a man driven by more than just ambition. There was an edge to him that hinted at a deeper, more complex inner world. Darcy's family life mirrored this duality. His marriage to Jan MacDonald, which might have seemed like a step toward stability and respectability, was anything but harmonious. Jan later described him as abusive, both physically and emotionally, a man capable of cruel manipulations and lies. Their union brought a son, Guy, into the world in 1968, but it didn't last. By the time Guy was 2, Jan had left, taking her child with her. Yet Darcy, determined to maintain control, used calculated legal maneuvers to gain custody of his son. It was an unusual outcome for the time, one that left Jan feeling helpless and estranged from Guy. As Guy grew, Darcy's control extended over every aspect of his son's life. Private schooling, ponies, and lavish trips gave the appearance of a privileged upbringing, but these gestures masked an upbringing shaped by strict expectations and a lack of genuine affection. Darcy wasn't nurturing a relationship. He was molding an heir who would follow his vision, no matter the cost. The dynamics within the Wetenhall family extended beyond Darcy's immediate household. Janet, the widow of Rupert, lived on the property and became an enduring figure in the farm's history. But even she was not immune to Darcy's darker tendencies. Accounts from those who knew them suggest tension, resentment, and an atmosphere far removed from the harmonious picture the farm's reputation suggested. And then there were the secrets, parts of Darcy's life that he guarded fiercely. For over a decade, he had been in a relationship with his neighbor Bob Perry, a bond that had to remain hidden in a time and place where such connections were taboo. Bob, too, was a family man, married with children, but his partnership with Darcy was a cornerstone of both their lives. Darcy's reluctance to live openly as his true self created a tension that affected every part of his life. Bob's eventual decision to leave, choosing to live authentically, was a blow that Darcy couldn't easily recover from. It wasn't just the loss of a partner, it was a reminder of his own fears and constraints. What no one outside the Wetenhall household could have known was just how precarious their world had become. The cracks in the family's foundation, hidden conflicts, unresolved traumas, and secrets that weighed heavily on all involved, were widening. And they would soon collapse under the weight of events that no one could have predicted. This is the story of a family admired by many but fractured in ways that would lead to a tragedy still remembered today. As we step deeper into the lives of Darcy, Guy, and those connected to them, the true nature of their struggles begins to emerge, a journey that would leave a lasting mark on everyone involved. Darcy Wetenhall's childhood was far from the picture of stability and comfort one might expect from a man who would later rise to prominence. His early years were marked by hardship and uncertainty, with hints of a darker undercurrent that shaped the man he would become. As a teenager, Darcy ran away from home multiple times, each attempt seemingly driven by a desperate need to escape. Some say he fled from abuse within the household, particularly from his mother, while others believe he was searching for something more, a chance at freedom or a glimpse of a life beyond his rural upbringing. These formative years left Darcy with deep emotional scars, though he rarely spoke of them. His struggles carved out a man who was determined to rise above his past, no matter the cost. This drive fueled his ambition, but it also created a personality that was difficult to understand, let alone predict. Darcy was a man of contrasts. To some, he was generous, offering kindness and assistance when least expected. To others, he was volatile, his temper flaring unpredictably, especially when things didn't go his way. People who interacted with him often described him as both magnetic and intimidating, a man whose presence could command a room but whose moods kept others on edge. By his teenage years, Darcy's life took a significant turn. He went to live with his cousins, Rupert and Janet Wetenhall, who owned Stanbury, the stud farm that would later become his legacy. Rupert and Janet were no ordinary relatives. They had transformed Stanbury into one of Australia's most prestigious sheep farms, earning a reputation for producing award-winning Corriedale sheep. When Rupert passed away unexpectedly during a trip to Argentina in 1962, Darcy stepped in to continue the family's work, carrying the weight of both expectation and opportunity. Darcy's personal life, however, was far less structured than his professional success. His marriage to Jan MacDonald, at first glance, seemed like a union built on love and mutual respect. But the reality was far more complicated. Darcy, driven by a need to climb the social ladder, saw marriage as a tool for cementing his place in high society. To him, Jan represented an opportunity to achieve that goal. Yet, what might have started with ambition quickly devolved into a relationship marked by control and abuse. Jan would later describe Darcy as a man capable of extraordinary cruelty. Their marriage was fraught with physical and emotional manipulation, with Darcy maintaining dominance at every turn. Despite the challenges, the couple had a son, Guy, born in 1968. For a brief moment, it seemed the family might find some semblance of normalcy, but this was not to be. When Guy was just 2 years old, Jan left Darcy, taking their son with her in what she hoped would be a fresh start. Darcy, however, was not one to let go so easily. Using calculated legal maneuvers, he gained custody of Guy, a rare outcome at the time, especially when the mother was still actively involved in her child's life. With Guy back under his roof, Darcy's approach to parenting reflected the same controlling tendencies that defined his other relationships. He provided Guy with what appeared to be a privileged upbringing. Private schooling, ski trips, and horseback riding were all part of the package. But these gestures weren't born of love or affection. They were part of Darcy's vision for his son, a vision where Guy would follow in his father's footsteps without question or deviation. As Guy grew older, Darcy's control extended beyond material provisions. He sought to shape not just his son's opportunities but his identity, ensuring that Guy remained tethered to the path Darcy had laid out for him. The emotional distance between father and son grew with each passing year, and by the time Guy reached his teenage years, the relationship had become strained, defined more by duty than genuine connection. Even within the wider Wetenhall family, Darcy's relationships were fraught with tension. Janet, Rupert's widow, continued to live at Stanbury, and while she remained a constant presence, her interactions with Darcy were often marked by conflict. Those who knew the family noted an atmosphere of underlying discord, a mix of resentment and obligation that hung over the household. Through it all, Darcy remained an enigmatic figure. His charm could disarm even the most skeptical observer, but his temper and need for control left a trail of fractured relationships. This complexity, this duality in his personality, wasn't just a quirk. It was a defining feature of the man who would later find himself at the center of one of Australia's most shocking tragedies. Darcy Wetenhall was a man shaped by a difficult past, driven by ambition, and undone by the very traits that had brought him success. His story, like his personality, was anything but simple, and it set the stage for events that would forever change the legacy of the Wetenhall name. For over a decade, Darcy Wetenhall and Bob Perry shared a connection that neither could speak about openly. Bob was more than just Darcy's neighbor. He was a trusted confidant and a deeply personal part of Darcy's life. Their relationship was a reflection of the times, a secret born of necessity, shaped by a society where being gay was not just frowned upon but outright condemned. Darcy, a man known for his public reputation as a successful farmer and family figure, went to great lengths to keep his private life hidden. Bob, too, was navigating a complicated existence. He was married with children, balancing the demands of a traditional family life with the quiet truth of his relationship with Darcy. Together, they lived in a space that was neither fully public nor entirely private, a precarious balance that required constant vigilance. Bob's presence brought a sense of stability to Darcy's often volatile world. He understood Darcy in ways others could not, offering companionship that extended beyond the superficial. But theirs was not a relationship without its challenges. The secrecy weighed heavily on both men, especially as the years passed. Bob, more than Darcy, began to feel the strain of living a life that required constant concealment. By the early 1990s, Bob's perspective began to shift. After years of hiding his true self, he made a decision that would change everything. Bob decided to leave Darcy and embrace a life of authenticity. This choice was not made lightly. It meant stepping away from a relationship that had been a cornerstone of his life for over 10 years. But for Bob, the desire to live openly outweighed the risks and uncertainties that came with such a decision. Bob's departure left a void that Darcy struggled to fill. For a man like Darcy, who thrived on control, the loss of Bob was more than just the end of a relationship. It was a personal failure, a reminder of his inability to reconcile the public and private aspects of his life. While Bob moved toward freedom, Darcy found himself grappling with feelings of abandonment and helplessness. Bob's new life was a stark contrast to Darcy's world. He relocated to Melbourne, taking a job that allowed him to commute and create a fresh start. In Melbourne, Bob began to explore relationships without the constraints of secrecy, something Darcy could never fully accept. For Darcy, the sight of Bob moving forward while he remained tethered to his hidden life was deeply unsettling. Darcy's response to Bob's departure was a mix of anger, sadness, and desperation. He sought solace in ways that only deepened his isolation. He began to frequent places in Melbourne where he could meet younger men, offering them work and shelter in exchange for their company. These encounters, however, were no substitute for the bond he had shared with Bob. They were fleeting, transactional, and often left Darcy feeling more hollow than before. What Darcy may not have realized was how much his reliance on Bob had shaped his ability to navigate the complexities of his life. Without Bob's steadying influence, Darcy's emotional fragility became more apparent. His temper grew shorter, his relationships more strained. The farm, once a symbol of stability and success, became a place filled with tension and unease. Bob's departure was not just a personal loss for Darcy, it was a turning point. It forced him to confront the limitations of the life he had built, a life of achievement and reputation, but also one of secrecy and denial. In the years that followed, Darcy's choices would reflect this inner turmoil, setting the stage for events that would leave a lasting mark on the Wetenhall name. While Bob moved forward, Darcy found himself unable to do the same. His world, once carefully constructed, began to fray at the edges. And as his sense of control slipped further away, so too did the veneer of stability that had defined his public image for so long. The departure of one man marked the beginning of a cascade of events that would ultimately redefine the Wetenhall legacy forever. Wayne Walton's life was a story of hardship and devastation long before his path crossed with Darcy Wetenhall. His childhood was marked by a moment of unimaginable violence that shaped the course of his future. At just 11 years old, Wayne witnessed his father take the life of his younger sister in a horrific act committed in front of their mother. It was a crime fueled by paranoia and rage, leaving scars that would haunt Wayne for the rest of his life. This early trauma became a shadow over Wayne's existence. Growing up in an environment where fear and pain were constants, he developed a tough exterior that masked a deeply wounded soul. The violence he endured and witnessed left an indelible mark, influencing his choices and shaping his relationships as he grew older. By the time Wayne reached adulthood, his life had taken a troubled path. A history of theft and run-ins with the law had landed him in difficult circumstances, but these were more symptoms than causes. Wayne was a product of his past, carrying the weight of unresolved pain and a sense of displacement wherever he went. It was during this period of uncertainty that his life intersected with Darcy Wetenhall. Darcy first encountered Wayne in Melbourne, a city where Darcy often sought out young men in vulnerable situations. For Wayne, Darcy's offer must have seemed like an opportunity to escape his struggles, a chance for stability, perhaps even a fresh start. Darcy provided Wayne with a home, a job at Stanbury, and what appeared to be the promise of safety. But their relationship was far from straightforward. Wayne and Darcy's dynamic quickly became a volatile mixture of control and resistance. Darcy, accustomed to wielding authority in every aspect of his life, extended that dominance to his relationship with Wayne. He expected obedience and gratitude, using his position of power to maintain control. But Wayne, shaped by years of surviving in a harsh world, was not one to submit easily. His past had taught him to fight back against anyone who tried to dominate him, and this resistance clashed with Darcy's need for control. The relationship between the two men was fraught with tension from the beginning. Darcy's interest in Wayne wasn't purely altruistic, and Wayne, aware of Darcy's vulnerabilities, quickly understood the power dynamic at play. He discovered Darcy's closely guarded secret, his hidden sexuality, and used it to his advantage. What began as a gesture of help evolved into a relationship steeped in manipulation, with both men attempting to assert control in different ways. For Wayne, the knowledge of Darcy's secret gave him leverage. He was no stranger to using whatever means necessary to survive, and this situation was no exception. Darcy, on the other hand, found himself in unfamiliar territory. Accustomed to being in charge, he now faced someone who could challenge his authority in ways he hadn't anticipated. The result was a relationship defined by its volatility, with moments of calm punctuated by bursts of conflict. During their time together, Wayne lived at Stanbury, becoming a part of the Wetenhall household. His presence added another layer of tension to a family already grappling with its own fractures. Darcy's son, Guy, and his cousin Janet lived under the same roof, and while details of their interactions with Wayne remain unclear, it's evident that his arrival disrupted the fragile balance within the home. The relationship between Darcy and Wayne lasted only a few months, but it was long enough to leave a lasting impact. Wayne's presence amplified the cracks in Darcy's carefully constructed world. The dynamics between them were not sustainable, with each man pushing the other to their limits. Darcy's need for control and Wayne's resistance to being controlled created a constant undercurrent of conflict, one that could not be resolved peacefully. As the days at Stanbury passed, the tension continued to build. Wayne's background of trauma and survival clashed with Darcy's hidden insecurities and desire for dominance. Their relationship, never built on trust or mutual understanding, became a pressure cooker of conflicting emotions and unresolved issues. It was only a matter of time before this volatile mix reached its breaking point, setting the stage for a tragedy that would shock everyone connected to the Wetenhall family. Wayne Walton's arrival at Stanbury was more than just a new chapter in his life. It was a collision of two troubled pasts, each carrying the weight of its own history. The meeting of these two men, shaped by pain and driven by opposing forces, became a turning point that would lead to devastating consequences. Their story, filled with layers of complexity and turmoil, remains a testament to the destructive power of unchecked emotions and unresolved trauma. March 18, 1992, began like any other day on the Wetenhall family farm, Stanbury. The routines of rural life carried on as usual, masking the deep-seated tension that had built within the household. For months, conflict had been brewing beneath the surface, a collision of troubled pasts, strained relationships, and personal turmoil. That day, the tension reached a breaking point, leading to one of the most shocking crimes in the region's history. Wayne Walton, a man haunted by his own traumatic past, had been living on the farm for months. His relationship with Darcy Wetenhall was volatile, marked by manipulation and power struggles. The young man had a history of surviving through resistance and defiance, traits that clashed with Darcy's need for dominance. For Darcy, control was everything. For Wayne, it was something to resist at all costs. Their interactions were marked by a constant push and pull, and it was clear to those around them that the situation was far from stable. On that fateful day, fueled by amphetamines and months of simmering resentment, Wayne's frustrations erupted into violence. The details of the confrontation remain unclear, but what is certain is the outcome. In the chaos that unfolded, Wayne grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun and turned it on the Wetenhall family. Darcy was the first victim. A man known for his commanding presence and unrelenting drive, he was cut down in an instant. His son, Guy, was next. At just 23 years old, Guy's life was taken before it had a chance to fully unfold. The final victim was 81-year-old Janet Wetenhall, Darcy's cousin by marriage and a long-standing member of the household. In a matter of moments, 3 lives were extinguished, and the Wetenhall family's legacy was irreparably shattered. The aftermath of the killings was as swift as it was shocking. The next day, Wayne was arrested while driving a stolen car filled with items taken from the farm. The weight of his crimes was undeniable, and the evidence against him left no room for doubt. He was charged with 3 counts of murder, and the community braced itself for a trial that promised to uncover the dark undercurrents of what had transpired at Stanbury. But that trial would never happen. Wayne Walton, who had lived a life shaped by violence and survival, could not face the consequences of his actions. On February 22, 1993, while awaiting trial in the B Division of Pentridge Prison, Wayne took his own life. He used a television cable to hang himself in the management and supervision section of the facility, leaving behind a cascade of unanswered questions. Wayne's death closed the door on the possibility of understanding his full motivations. Without a trial, the intricate web of relationships, traumas, and decisions that led to the murders could never be fully unraveled. What was left were fragments of a story pieced together through witness accounts, police reports, and the lingering echoes of those who had lived it. For the Wetenhall family, the tragedy marked the end of an era. The once thriving Stanbury farm, a symbol of prestige and success, was no longer a place of pride. By the end of 1992, it was sold at auction, purchased by Stephen Spargo, a former president of the Royal Agricultural Society of Victoria, and his wife, Jill. What had once been a cornerstone of the Wetenhall family legacy became a reminder of the devastation that had unfolded there. The story of the Wetenhall murders did not fade quietly into history. It became the subject of conversations and analyses, a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked emotions and unresolved pasts. Bob Perry, Darcy's former partner, carried a heavy burden of guilt, feeling as though his departure had somehow set the tragedy in motion. His story, along with those of Darcy, Guy, Janet, and Wayne, was later chronicled in a true crime book, capturing the complexity of their lives and the devastating events that brought them to a violent end. The murders at Stanbury were more than just a crime. They were a convergence of broken lives, hidden struggles, and fatal decisions. The loss of 3 lives, the destruction of a family's legacy, and the lingering questions left behind ensure that the events of March 18, 1992, will not be forgotten. What remains is a haunting reminder of how unresolved pain and fractured relationships can lead to tragic and irreversible outcomes. Weeks after Darcy Wetenhall's death, a revelation surfaced that stunned those who had known him. Post-mortem examinations revealed that Darcy had been living with HIV, a diagnosis he had kept hidden from nearly everyone in his life. In the early 1990s, HIV was surrounded by fear and stigma, and a diagnosis often carried with it not only a grim prognosis but also a profound social burden. For Darcy, a man who valued control and guarded his privacy fiercely, this secret was yet another layer in the complicated web of his existence. Those who had been close to Darcy, including his former partner Bob Perry, were not entirely surprised. Bob later recalled Darcy suffering from symptoms that were consistent with the early stages of the disease. Night sweats, persistent rashes, and declining health had been apparent in the months leading up to the tragedy. Despite these signs, Darcy never acknowledged his condition, choosing instead to endure it in silence. This revelation cast a new light on Darcy's actions and relationships. It became clear that he had been grappling with more than just the pressures of running a prestigious farm or managing a fractious household. The weight of his illness, combined with the fear of exposure, added another dimension to his personality. A man already shaped by a turbulent past and an unyielding need for control was now facing the ultimate loss of that control. Darcy's diagnosis also raised questions about the dynamics of his relationships, particularly with Bob and later with Wayne Walton. In hindsight, the choices he made, from his secretive nature to his increasingly volatile behavior, could be seen as the actions of a man under immense pressure. The isolation that came with his hidden life was compounded by his illness, creating a situation where his emotional and psychological burdens were carried entirely alone. The public reaction to this revelation was as complex as the man himself. For some, it evoked sympathy, a recognition that Darcy's life had been far more complicated and painful than it appeared. For others, it fueled speculation and judgment, as people sought to make sense of how his hidden struggles might have influenced the events that led to his death and the deaths of his son and cousin. As the shockwaves of the murders settled, the broader impact on the Wetenhall family's legacy became clear. Stanbury, once a symbol of excellence in Australian sheep farming, was no longer the proud estate it had been for decades. By December of 1992, the farm was sold at auction, ending its long association with the Wetenhall name. The property, once synonymous with success and prestige, now bore the weight of its tragic history. The sale of Stanbury marked more than the end of a family's business. It was the closing chapter of a legacy built on ambition, resilience, and secrecy. The achievements of the Wetenhall family, which had once been celebrated across the nation, were now overshadowed by the events that had unfolded within its walls. The farm, like the family itself, became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how hidden truths and unresolved conflicts can lead to irreversible consequences. What lessons can we draw from their fate? Does this story serve as a warning about the cost of living in denial, or does it highlight the human capacity for resilience and its breaking points? And what of the society they lived in, a world that demanded conformity and punished deviation? Did it play a role in the tragedy that unfolded? These are questions without easy answers, but they remain essential to understanding the lives and losses of the Wetenhall family. Their story invites reflection on the fragile balance between what we show the world and what we keep hidden, and how those choices shape our lives and the lives of those around us. If you found this story compelling, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What stands out to you as the defining moment of this tragedy? What do you believe could have changed the outcome, if anything? Share your insights in the comments below. And if you want to explore more stories that delve into the complexities of human behavior and the events that define us, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us uncover and share stories that intrigue, challenge, and inspire thought. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe.